What is your nobody will ever believe this story? One time when I was a teenager I was playing pool with friends. The pizza arrived or whatever and I took one last shot just as everyone was leaving and sank like 5 balls. It was the single best move I have ever made in any game I have ever played. But no one saw it and there was no way to take credit for it without sounding like a lion. I was doing a service call at an equestrian farm. I went to the bathroom in the barn to take a leak. The door was slightly ajar and the light was off. I pushed open the door and hit the light only to see a goat dressed in a fleece vest eating toilet paper off the roll. He gave me this look like to say WTF are you looking at? I turned off the light and left. That's very on brand goat behavior. I once threw the inside of a pen at least 9 feet clear across a room and skewered a fly that was annoying me. Legit I felt like a ninja and have no way to prove it to anyone. Not gonna lie, it's probably my peak and it's all been downhill ever since. I was at a friend's off-grid cottage with our combined amount of 16 dogs. It is a 1200-acre property with over 2 kilometers of basically off-roading to get to the cottage itself, with very poor cell reception. We were out for a romp in the woods to take out a problem beaver dam. It diverted a river from draining into the lake and flooding the road instead, so the dam is absolutely massive, like a good 20 feet drop on one side. So we finally get through enough that water started pouring through and my friend realizes her key fob is missing. Cue massive panic. The other key fob is over a 3-hour drive away. One of her dogs that was up on the dam with us stuck his head into the moving water and pulled out the key fob. Had we not both witnessed it we would never have believed each other, and trying to tell other people what happened, with both of us able to tell the same story, was still met with disbelief. My ex, American, met him in the US, and my other ex, Dutch, met him 3 years later in Argentina, work at the same office in Amsterdam. They are colleagues. I found out cause I saw a FB post in which they were at the same office, 2 years after me and Dutchy broke up, and I still live in Argentina. Also, some years ago, I was in a relationship with a guy. We lived together in a tiny apartment. The relationship ended in a terrible way. 4 years later, I started dating another guy. He takes me to his house. It was the apartment I used to share with my ex. And let me tell you, Buenos Aires is a huge city. You seem to have a type. Was lying in bed watching a movie and too lazy to move. Saw a small harmless spider drop down from a thread on the ceiling, obviously heading for the far side of my bed. Even if it wasn't venomous I didn't want to share my bed with it, but also didn't want to move. Not thinking it'd actually do anything I reached out my arm towards it, but still quite a few feet away, and started waving my fingers at it in annoyance. To my absolute surprise it immediately stopped its descent and actually retracted back up its line while I was sitting there in surprise. Took me a couple of seconds to realize that my hand must look like the most giant freaking spider he'd ever seen, standing on its back legs and waving the front 5 and the frick off or I'll wreck you dance. Started out in the normal math class until my teacher realized I should switch to the advanced class because I got perfect scores on everything. We were just about to start the chapter about telling time when I made the switch. The advanced math class already knew how to tell time. I had all digital clocks at my house. I didn't actually learn how to tell time till I was about to start high school and thought I should learn. Don't worry bro, I still can't sight read analog clocks. If I ever need to use one, I have to use my finger to point up to it and count the hours and minutes. I don't remember learning it in school and I missed some of 2nd grade, so I guess that's why. I've tried to teach myself but it just never sticks. So digital it is. I held a stick straight up in the air while pretending to be a magical creature and then it immediately started raining heavily. When I was a kid, I got a shoebox and filled it with some sand, a pile of sugar, and a few eggs. Like 3 or 4. I brought that box into the house and put it in my cabinet. I forgot about the box for like 2 days. When I went to check the box, because I thought the ants couldn't get out, I saw something that still seemed insane to me. But I know what I saw. A military-style formation of ants, in a large rectangle, sorted by sizes with the smallest ones in front, like 2. Might have been 4. Big ones in front of the others facing the formation. The large ones were facing away from the cabinet doors. The ants remained still for like 2 or 3 seconds, then scattered in every direction. You ruined their boot camp graduations. I legit found a $100 bill on the ground. I couldn't believe it myself, but I took it straight to the ATM and it was accepted. I used to work at a movie theater and found a $100 bill on the floor of the bathroom, but an old man had just left, so I ran out and asked if it was his. He said it was, so I gave it back. When he opened his wallet, it had a lot of other big bills, so I think he was telling the truth. Got a hole-in-one playing golf by myself with no one else around me on the course. Most of my friends take my word it, but still give me a hard time saying it never happened. Watched an ant pick up its injured friend with its 2 front legs and ran away on its last 2 legs like a human would. My old boss has a NXIVM brand. I saw it when she reached up to get something and panicked because it just seems rude to point out the branded skin on another person. I immediately recognized the symbol and it was surreal. I was immersed in podcasts and stuff about that at the time. My wife has an artifact, reflective metallic nose ring looking object, embedded in her lower left rib cage between the bone and fatty tissue. It was discovered after an MRI for unrelated issue. The owls. When my grandpa passed away in November of 2008, I was at my dad's house. The front yard is almost enclosed by pine trees. I kept hearing weird noises, so I decided to go outside and see what it was. We shone a light on the trees and was greeted by many pairs of eyes. There had to be at least 20 owls just hanging out in the trees. My grandpa had an interesting way with birds and we had a very close bond. That was the only time the owls had ever been to our house. Until my mastiff passed away last year. I was home alone, brushing my teeth when I heard the familiar sound. I thought I was going crazy, but no, there they were. Owls in the trees, a completely different time of year. 12 years later, the owls keep watch. Teach us your ways, O chosen one of owls. Johnny Sins took a picture of me and my wife in Maui on our honeymoon. I chickened out of asking for a pic. Must have liked being behind the camera for once. I saw David Wenham, Ferrament, Lotter, at a cafe downtown. He was just walking by with someone I assume may have been a friend or partner. You just don't get celebrities where I live very often. I told one of my mates and he didn't believe me. It was him. Sean Astin, Goonies, Lotter, Stranger Things, was in my bar one night. I was outside sneaking a quick smoke when he randomly walked up, hugged me and said, "You got this." I didn't even recognize him at first until someone mentioned who he was and I closed his tab. I was the only bartender and had been at capacity for 6 hours. My grandmother once spent a week in New York watching musicals with friends, etc. She told me that she was walking across the park by herself and ripped her purse. 2 very nice men helped her get her things together and then insisted on getting a pic of the 3 of them for her grandkids. It was Sean Astin and Elijah Wood. She had no idea. This is pretty sad, but the night my mom died, I lived in the same house, sleeping down the hall. I was asleep and I suddenly woke up to a cold sinking feeling. I went into my living room to check on my mom and she took her final breath soon after. There was no way my body could have known, as I couldn't hear nor see her from my room. I keep waking up to my lights flickering at 5:55 am. It's been about 7+ times and nobody believes me. Just moved into this house a few months ago. If it happens again, I'm getting a camera installed. Totally believable. Probably a local business automatically starting up some kind of machinery causing a power sag, like a miniature temporary but reoccurring brownout. When I was 8 years old and my sister was 7, we both had the same dream and ended up sleepwalking together in the night out into the middle of the road. Let me give you some backstory. Earlier that day we had new neighbors move into the house behind us. They had 2 daughters around our age that we quickly made friends with. Well, that night my sister and I both dreamt we're running in a field full of sunflowers, picking them for our new friends. I felt so happy and carefree in the dream. And I could see my little sister running alongside me, also picking sunflowers. Well, when we woke up, My mom and our neighbors were there telling us that we had both been sleepwalking around outside together holding hands and about to walk into the middle of the street when my neighbors, not the ones we had just met, who had just got home, spotted us. The wife ran to grab us, while the husband ran inside his house to get his gun before going into our house to check on my mom. Because we had left the front door wide open, they thought there might have been a break-in. My mom is hard of hearing. She is completely deaf in one ear and only has about 15% of her hearing in her other ear and wears a hearing aid but takes it off at night to sleep, which is why she never heard us go out the front door. Anyways, after we realized what had happened, we talked about everything and literally recalled all of the same details and remember seeing each other in our dreams. It's now been 20 years and we still remember everything the same and stick by our memories of that night. I'm just grateful to our neighbors because who knows what would have happened if they didn't notice us. I took a one-way flight 1,200 miles away. 7 months later I took another one-way flight back home and sat next to the same random person. I once saw a kid strangle another kid at homeschool gym class. The victim survived and the strangler showed up at class again a few weeks later. I went and watched Pirates of the Caribbean at the theater with Linkin Park after they finished their part in a concert in DC. That's awesome. Lucky you. Big fan of Linkin Park. My sister and I shared a room in HS and would get ready together most mornings without saying a word as we would just be too tired to interact. I was sitting at the vanity one morning and her on the bed when I had a sudden urge to flick my scrunchie. All I said was "watch this" and released the hairband across the room. I don't know how to explain this, but the scrunchie went right around the post of the bed, which was a sphere the size of a big fist. When I tell you, logically this should not have happened. We didn't even celebrate. All we could do was stare at each other puzzled. The silence was then broken as my dad walked in. I can only imagine how insane we looked as we tried to explain to him what just happened. Honestly, it's not that serious and this is my first post, but I think about this a lot. I once threw a frisbee into a basketball hoop from further than full court in a gym with about other 25 people in it. Not a single person saw and no one believed me. Totally believable. Disc golf throwers get it in the nets from really far distances and around obstacles like trees. So definitely possible to get it in a basketball hoop from across the gym. When my autistic brother was in the 5th grade, he would bike to school every day. He's got that thing where he's bad at normal stuff, but amazing at weird other things. One day he asks my mom if he can skip school. She says no. Without her knowing, he goes downstairs and switches his school bag with his bug-out bag, gets on his bike and dips. That afternoon my mom got a call from the school that he's absent. She puts 2 and 2 together and goes looking for him. She found him hours later in the coulee, shirtless, with a tent set up, eating fish he'd caught from the river, cleaned, and cooked over a fire. He couldn't understand why my mom was upset. I once actually had to give legit CPR to a man when he had a heart attack. He was dead when the paramedics got to the house, but the medics took over and got him back. He died again in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, but they brought him back again. If it wasn't for me, he would have never had a chance. Also, doing CPR for real is freaking exhausting. Imagine dying twice and surviving. Mine. I woke up during open heart surgery and 100% believed I had a ladder match at WrestleMania. Not mine. My mum was only a kid during the troubles in Ireland back in the day. She was walking to school one day and someone got shot beside her. The bullet ended up ricocheting and went through my ma's leg. She went on to school and was too afraid to tell my grandparents.